Okay, so we've got a lot. We'll see how much we cover. There's a lot going on in what we're talking about. So there are a lot of pieces, and each one could be like a whole day for bringing. So we'll see how it goes. So this week is Parshas Baha'aloischa. Baha'aloischa literally means when you will make it go up, when you will make it ascend. And it opens up talking about the menorah. It says, Baha'aloischa es haneres, when you will make the lights, the lamps on the menorah ascend, i.e. when you will light the menorah, making the lamps on the menorah ascend, lighting them. When you will make the Baha'aloischa es haneres. Neres is, it's not quite fire, it's not quite candles. Like lamps is probably a good word. So when you will make them go up, i.e. when you will light them. The reason it says Baha'aloischa, when you will make them go up, as opposed to just when you will light them, because you have to light it until, oh, thank you very much, until the fire is able to maintain itself and to keep burning. You know, sometimes you light a candle and then you take away the match and it's not quite lit and you have to light it again. So until it's going up on its own. One of the multiple messages in the word Baha'aloischa. So the Haftarah of this week's Parsha, which the Haftarah is always related to the Parsha, right? The way the Haftarah started was, there was a time when we were unable to read the weekly Torah portion on Shabbos, so there was a portion of the Nevi'im, of the prophets, that was selected to read each week. Instead of that, now that we're able, Baruch Hashem, to do both, we do both. So there's always a connection, because the point of the Haftarah was to stand in for the Torah portion, so there's some sort of connection. So in this week's Haftarah, we have a Nevuah, a prophecy, and in this Nevuah it says, V'hinei v'ra'isi v'hinei menorahs zahav kula, there was this pure golden menorah, and it was a menorah that resembled the menorah of the Beis Hamikdash. It had 7 branches, and in the prophecy, in this vision, the menorah that's described was a metaphor for us, for Klal Yisrael, for the Jewish people. And there's a very specific reason why the menorah, why one of the many metaphors for us is a menorah of 7 branches. Well, a number of reasons. And one of them is that the fact that there are 7 branches. Each of the branches, there's no branch on the menorah that necessarily contributes more light than any of the other branches. They're all giving more or less the same contribution of light. But each one exists independently of the other one, and each one is separate to the others. And this is a very, very important metaphor for the way we are as a people. First of all, the menorah is one body. Each of these lamps is part of the one menorah. But there are 7 separate, distinctly separate, and specifically, intentionally separate branches, and each branch has its own lamp that gives light. And we as a people have branches. There are different, and the number 7 refers primarily to the 7 midos of the nefesh. Right? In every world, in every layer of reality, spiritual and physical, there are the 10 spheros, right? Chachma bin Adas, and then there's Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchus, which are the emotional ones, the midos. And each of our nefashos, every soul, the animal soul, the godly soul, also has these 10 things. In a soul, in a nefesh, they're not called spheres, they're called koiches. They're not the structural components of a world, they are the abilities of a soul, of a nefesh. These are the 10 koiches of the nefesh. But they have the same names because it's an equivalent structure. So in every nefesh has a ability of chachma, of conception of an idea, of bina, of comprehending the idea, of das, of internalizing the idea, of chesed, open giving kindness, gvura, strength, tiferes, beauty, mercy, netzach, victory, hod, maybe glory, yesod, foundation, malchus. We don't necessarily need to get into the nitty-gritty of each one and the differences between them. But, you know, these are all sort of labels that address the broad conceptual role of each of them. There's obviously, you know, again, we could have a whole week-long discussion about each one of them. But there are 7, let's say, primary emotional personality components of the nefesh. And we all have all of them, but for different people, there are different ones that are at the forefront. There are different, we have different personalities, and the personality is not incidental, right? Our personalities, there are multiple layers, there are multiple components that go into making up our personalities. Part of that is genetic. Part of that is the nature of our individual neshama, our individual soul, part of our individual nefesh habahamis. And all of them are designed to go together, right? The specific character and nature of a given nefesh habahamis animal soul is designed and coordinated to match with a body that is genetically wired to be partners with it. So, there's a central nervous system and a brain component. There's a physiological component and a nefesh component. It's not either or, it's both. And these things come together to give us our personalities, to give us our strengths, to give us our weaknesses, to give us our passions, all of these things. And there is a lot of variation across people. And it's supposed to be that way. If let's say that, Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu in the Mishkan and then in the Beis Hamikdash to make a menorah with 7 branches and 7 lamps, and you have this much oil, and each lamp should give this much light, and it doesn't say that specifically in the Pesukim, but there are halachas of how to do it. And let's say Moshe Rabbeinu would say, you know what? That's a waste of space, it's a waste of gold. I'm just going to make like a single candelabra. I'm just going to stand on the floor. There's going to be one lamp, and we'll put 7 times as much oil. We'll put 7 wicks in, or a wick that's 7 times as big. We'll get the same amount of light. It's like, no, that's not the mitzvah. The reason there are 7 branches is not because we need 7 times as much light as one branch could provide, because you could make one that could give 7 times as much light very easily. It'd actually be a lot more of an efficient way to do it. That's not the point here. The point is the menorah has to have 7 distinct branches. 1 or 3 or 5 or 6 doesn't cut it, even if it gives the same amount of light. It's not about the amount of light that needs 7 lamps. It's about there needs to be 7 separate lamps providing the light. It's one menorah. It's one light source that has 7 separate components, each contributing a portion of the light that the menorah collectively is providing. There are people who, for example, when trying to figure out, let's say, right, let's maybe take an equivalent that's a little bit maybe somewhat simpler, is let's say when people are trying to figure out what career they want to pursue. Someone's a young adult, a teenager, whatever it is, and they're trying to figure out what are they going to major in, blah, 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 what career they want to pursue. Let's say that someone goes to a career counselor who's actually really competent and cares and knows what they're doing and is a real, takes their job seriously. The reason that they give different recommendations to different people is not just because some people are more capable than others. It's not like, really, being a doctor or a lawyer or an entrepreneur or a plumber or whatever it is the best thing. The question is, do you have what it takes? And if you don't have what it takes, we'll figure out something else no, it's not like that at all, right? Society needs to have doctors, and we need to have, I guess, practically lawyers. We need to have plumbers. We need to have carpenters. We need builders. We need therapists. We need cooks. We need farmers. We need all of these kinds of people. And society missing anyone, if all of a sudden any one of these industries, everyone would just quit, we'd have a very big problem. We need all of these roles to be filled. Are some more urgent than others? Yeah, maybe. Some of them are going to cause a catastrophe within a day of shutting down, and some of them maybe we could manage months or weeks or whatever it is. But we need them all. And for the society to be complete, all of them need to be there. Now, it just so happens to be that there are different personalities, different temperaments, that will predispose people to, number one, enjoying a particular field more than others. Number two, perhaps to being more competent or successful in a particular field more than others. So the role of this career counselor is not to say you're good enough for this and you're only good enough for that. It's to say, okay, so this is where your strengths lie, this is where your interests lie. Considering your combination of strengths and interests, it's a good idea for you to go into this career, not because that's the best career that you're capable of, but this is the career, one of the many things that society needs, and this is one that your personality and temperament predispose you to hopefully both enjoying and succeeding at. Right, first and foremost, succeeding at. If you can find one that they can succeed at and enjoy, and there is a lot of dynamic interplay between the two, obviously, even better. So there are different temperaments that predispose people that make it a good idea, right? If the fact that someone is being recommended to go into a particular career, assuming again that the person who's giving them the advice is actually competent and good at what they do, the reason they're making this recommendation is because it's a good idea for this person to put their time and their effort into this pursuit because their personality is a match for being successful at this thing that we all collectively need. Right? And it's not... Let's leave it at that. So now, there are different people with different personalities. For example, right, everybody... Ideally, we should all have the capacity to be kind and warm. We should all have the capacity to be able to be stern and demanding and to, have a more sort of disciplinary approach to things. There are times and places that demand either or from everybody. It is also the case that there are some people that naturally lean very strongly towards the chesed, the open, giving, kind side of things. And there are some people whose personalities very strongly lean more towards the gvura, stern, demanding side of things. And what that means is that there are certain things that, the first person is going to tend to be better at, and there are certain things that the second person is going to tend to be better at. We need lots of different things, and different people's personalities are going to predispose them to being able to fulfill or provide different parts of the picture that we need more effectively. So yes, there are different personality types. Yes, there are chesed people and gvura people, etc., etc., etc. There are 7 branches on the menorah. And the reason there are 7 branches is because we need 7 different branches to get the job done. A 6-branch menorah does not fulfill the mitzvah. It's not 6/7, whatever it is, 85-ish% of the mitzvah. It's 0% of the mitzvah. 6 branches is 0% mitzvah. 7 branches, 100% mitzvah, because we need 7 branches for the menorah to do its job. If there was a category of personality types of nefesh tendencies that were eliminated from us collectively, we wouldn't be able to do what we need to do collectively. There needs to be every different personality type, every person with their natural tendencies, their natural interests, their natural strengths, their natural weaknesses, right? It's who we are, not deep down, but who we are practically in terms of, our effectively, let's say our personality, let's call it, broadly speaking, is a combination of strengths, weaknesses, interests, likes, dislikes, passions, etc. All of these things come together. And every single combination that exists needs to be here. Hashem didn't make a mistake in designing anyone. And if, every one of us has a unique personality, a unique set of personality traits that has never existed before throughout the billions and billions, tens, however many billions of people have existed since the world was created. Every one of us has a unique combination of traits that has never existed before. And the reason is because it needs to be here. It's not because, and the reason it needs to be here is because there's something that this personality type, that our personal combination of traits can provide, that all other tens of billions of personality types that have existed since the world was created combined couldn't provide. That's why Hashem brought our combination of traits into the world, because there was something that was needed that can only be fulfilled by our personal combination of personality traits. And these can broadly, let's say, be broken down into 7 very broad categories. And each of them exists for a reason. It's not like, if we weren't coming at it from this sort of direction of, things being created intentionally, having a reason, it wouldn't be unreasonable for someone to explain the situation as something along the lines of, look, the fact is, some people have more strengths than others. Some people are more competent and capable than others. You want the most competent people doing the most important jobs, and you try to allocate people. Ideally, hypothetically, if we could arrange for everybody to all have the ultimate set of strengths, that would be ideal, right? It's not an unreasonable direction to come from. It would make life really sad and boring and dull, but that's already a whole separate layer of complexity. But the fact is, it's not unreasonable to say, look, this is reality. The reality is that we come from a randomly assorted combination of genes from our parents, and over time all these combinations develop, and this is what it is. So we all have to make the most of what we have. We have to make the most of our genes, make the most of our circumstances, our personality, etc., and figure out the best thing we can do considering what we have. Because that's the way it is. Ideally, would we have liked to make it different? Yeah, if we could, but we can't, so it is what it is. That's not unreasonable, it's just not correct. It's not correct because it's not the case that we got what we got and it's a good idea to make the most of it. Find, the perfect matching career in terms of what's the best contribution you can make, the highest level contribution you can make, that you're also going to enjoy, etc. It's really, in a way, it's more the opposite direction. Not that we shouldn't try to figure that out, but what we're trying to figure out when a person says, okay, here are my strengths and my weaknesses, my passions, my interests, here's something I can do that's really going to be capitalizing on my strengths and I'm going to enjoy it and be passionate about it. That's a very good analysis for everybody to make in terms of deciding, what our primary pursuits are going to be. Personally, in terms of career, if we're pursuing a career, etc. These are very, very good questions to ask and good analyses to try and make. But the analysis we're making here is not really, well, this is what I have to work with, what's the best thing I can do with it? It's actually the reverse. What we do when we ask those questions is reverse engineering. Well, Hashem created me for a reason. Hashem gave me these strengths, this personality, these interests. What seems like the thing that would be the best pursuit to make the most of my strengths considering my personality and interests, etc.? A case so it makes sense that that's the direction Hashem wants me to be heading in. So that's what I'm going to do. Right? It's not, well, what can I do to make the most of what I got? It is also that the truth is because Hashem put us here to make a contribution, and if we can make a disproportionately large contribution to Dir B'Tachtonim, to the world, to Torah Mitzvahs, to Judaism, to the universe, in terms of what we had to do with it, to uplift it, to elevate it, etc. If we can make a disproportionately large contribution in a particular way, considering our strengths and personality types, it's just a good idea in terms of getting the maximum bang for our buck to pursue that. It's also true, an additional layer to that is, it's also most likely that that's what Hashem wants us to be doing, and that's what He designed us for, which is why He designed us in a way that predisposes us to being good for that. Now, there may be times where we do that analysis and come to a conclusion that's very reasonable, makes perfect sense, and then life throws us a couple of curveballs and things go in a completely different direction. And sometimes, right, the message that Hashem's sending us is, yes, based on your analysis, it made sense to conclude that that's what you were supposed to do and to pursue that. That wasn't really the plan. There's a specific reason why I created you with these strengths and this personality type, even though I had something else in mind for you. So I'm sending something to direct you in that direction. So, it's important to remember, whilst on one hand, it's a very good idea to do an analysis along these lines. First of all, so we can make the best contribution to Hashem's purpose. And so it's not really separate, it goes hand in hand, but it's another part of the picture. And we're most likely doing what it seems that Hashem wants us to be doing, specifically. If something comes and throws a spanner in the works and sends us in a completely different direction, a person could get frustrated and say, like, it's so obvious I'm supposed to be doing that, and now I can't do it anymore, I've got to do this instead. Apparently, what was obvious wasn't actually correct. That can also happen. Right? So we've got to be open to the inputs that Hashem sends us. But this idea of Hashem having created different personality types, different categories of souls, not that some have things that others don't have, broadly speaking, every soul has all 7 of these midos, all 7 of these, let's call them emotional characteristics, but there's a lot of variation in terms of which one's at the forefront. Which one is the strongest, right? Which one comes easiest? Which one are we most comfortable with, etc. And these things tend to go together. And that's because there are 7 different lamps that the menorah needs to have burning in order to do what it's supposed to do. And there are 7 different categories of nefashos, of nefesh personality types that need to be here in order for us collectively as the menorah to do what we need to do. Now, what was the menorah supposed to do? What was the function, the primary function, most simply, of the menorah was to provide light, to illuminate. And that's what we are here to do, to provide light, to illuminate collectively. Now, the menorah was in the Kodesh of the Beis HaMikdash, or of the Mishkan, but its job wasn't just to illuminate that space, right? And there's this, light. There's a reason why divinity is often referred to, or the metaphor that's used for divinity is light, or many, many reasons, but light radiates. Light spreads automatically as long as there are no barriers. And as it spreads, it makes things visible. It makes life more functional and pleasant, etc. It illuminates, it makes things bright. Divinity naturally spreads automatically. Yes, things can get in the way. You can put up a wall and block the light, but in the absence of barriers, light just will radiate light will just continue radiating until it hits something that stops it. And it makes things brighter. Divinity radiates and it brightens things up. It illuminates. It makes things brighter. And we are here to provide, to radiate divinity. Now, the menorah was there to provide light, both literally, or let's say primarily more metaphorically, right? The menorah was a channel of divinity into the world, for the whole world, which is represented by the fact that its actual physical structure and function were to provide light. And the reason that was its physical structure and function was because that's a physical representation of what it was doing in a more abstract sense, in a less tangible sense, which is to channel divinity, divine light into the world. And it was there to do it, as I just said, into the world, not just into the Beis HaMikdash. And the fact that the menorah's job, the menorah's role was to radiate divinity, divine light, not just into the Beis HaMikdash, but into the whole world, was expressed and represented in the fact that in the walls of the Beis HaMikdash, the walls of the Beis HaMikdash were quite thick. And, they didn't have the technology to be able to build super tall walls, super thin. The taller a wall was, the wider it had to be to have structural integrity. That's part of it. I'm not saying that in the third Beis HaMikdash we're going to have these super thin walls because we have the technology. But when the windows in the Beis Hamikdash were designed in a way that was contrary to general design principles. So if you have, let's say, if we're looking at the side view of the wall, right? We're looking here at a wall that's going this way, and we sliced a cross-section through the wall, and let's say there's a window here. A window could, in a brick wall, basically a hole, right? Just there's a gap in the bricks. Coming from the side, it could just look like that, right? You have bricks up to here and bricks up to here, and then there's an opening so that light can go through. I mean, that's probably not very proportional. It'll probably be a lot bigger, but let's say the wall looks something like this. I think that marker is going to come in handy. Thank you. Now, if this is the interior, let's say of the house or building or whatever it is, and this is outdoors, generally what would happen is, in a window like this, it would be built something like that, so that however big the opening could be on the outside to let light in, we make it progressively even wider and wider on the inside so the light can spread out to fill that interior space. In the Beis Hamikdash, it was the opposite. The way that the windows in the Beis Hamikdash were structured was that if this is the interior of the Beis Hamikdash and that's the outside, the windows were structured like that. Because in a regular house, the point of the windows is to allow sunlight into the house to brighten the house. You want the light to spread inwards. In the function of the windows in the Beis Hamikdash was the opposite. The role of the Beis Hamikdash was, the Beis Hamikdash is a dwelling place for divinity. It's a place where there's a unique integration of divinity into the material, and that is the source of, let's say, integrative divinity for the whole world. So if the job of the Beis Hamikdash is to provide light and divinity for the whole world, we want it to spread outwards. We're not looking for light to spread inwards. And this specifically being the function of the menorah to channel divine light, which is expressed in its physical function, which is actually physical lights, lamps, its job was not to channel divinity into the Beis Hamikdash. The Beis Hamikdash was its immediate environment, but its job was to channel divinity for the whole world, which is why the windows are shaped like that. And this is what we are here for. The menorah in the Haftorah is a metaphor for us, for the Jewish people. We are the chosen people. Chosen for what? Chosen to walk around with our noses up in the air, or chosen to walk around looking down at our noses as everyone because we're better? No, that's categorically not what it means. We are chosen to have a specific responsibility. Yes, the responsibility is a privilege and an honor. I'm not taking that away. But it's first and foremost a responsibility that we are chosen for, which is that we are here. Everything that exists is here to be a part of uplifting the world and brightening it, etc., and bringing divinity into the world. Everything and everyone. Someone who's not Jewish has 7 mitzvahs, we have 613. Right? The laws of the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach, the 7 Noahide laws, look something like this. The laws of the halachas for a Torah observant Jew are like this. And it continues further. That's just like, the original text, and it just continues on, and there's more and more elaboration and discussion, etc. So yes, we bear the brunt, we carry a disproportionate part of this responsibility, a disproportionate level of responsibility to brighten up the world. We are here. We as a people collectively are a menorah, a candelabrum that is here to be a source of, or a channel for divine light to the world. Just like the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, which is why it's a metaphor for us. It's there to channel the light to the whole world. And the windows of the Beis Hamikdash are there, designed that way to make that very clear. We are here to provide light to the world, to the universe, to all of humanity, to time, to space, to everything. So the objective is the same. What we're here to do, our primary objective, the primary objective we all share. The foundational principles of doing that, we all share. And again, as always, I think that health and well-being are a really good, not even, again, it's not quite a metaphor, it's an actual equivalent, which is why it serves so effectively and so consistently effectively as a good source of clarification, let's say, or analogy. The principles of health, generally speaking, are the same for everybody, right? Eat the right amounts of the right foods, do the right amount of the right kind of exercises, get the right amount of good quality sleep. Those three things cover 99.999% of everything. The general principles of, let's say, nutrition, again, the foundational core principles are the same for everyone. Calories in, calories out. You know, and the reason a lot of people confuse this is that it's very simple math, right? If someone wants to be taking in the right number of calories, very simple, or expending the right amount of energy. If a person, let's say, wants to maintain a steady weight, if the number of calories that come into their body are the number of calories that their body spends every day, their weight will be steady. If a person brings in more calories than they use, it will go up because those extra calories get stored. If a person uses more calories they bring in, it will go down. Now, different people's bodies have natural different basal metabolic rates. You could have 5 people who all look very similar, and each of them has a bit of a different metabolism, and one person's body will burn 1,500 calories a day just by being alive. Someone else's body will burn maybe 800 calories just by being alive, and someone else's will burn 3,000. So yes, they all do the same exercise and eat the same amounts of food. It doesn't mean that they all have, so you might think it's the same calories in, calories out. It's not. The principles are the same. That being said, some people have to eat more, some people have to eat less. Some people are going to do better by eating certain kinds of foods. There are some people who, will do much better on a, let's say, primarily plant-based diet, and some people who will do very poorly on a primarily plant-based diet. The principles are the same: good diet, good quality nutrients, and someone who's primarily on a plant-based diet should be trying to do the best quality of plant-based ingredients that they can manage, and someone who's on maybe a more omnivorous diet or a more primarily meat-based or whatever it is should be getting the best quality ingredients that they can get. The principles are the same. The specifics have a lot of variation. And this goes like so deep. It goes all the way down to our genetics, right? We look at how much variation there is in people. If you would actually write down the sequence of all of our genomes, that by percentage, if you didn't know anything about genetics and you would just type out our genomes, you would say they're all basically identical. Like, the number of differences are so minuscule, it's statistically irrelevant. There's no way that's going to make a difference in the number of base pairs in our genomes. The number of actual differences between a person is like negligible, completely negligible. It just so happens to be that those few different changes make a massive difference. Now, that comes all the way through. The basics are the same, identical across everyone. There are substantial enough differences that we have to take different approaches if we want to do things in the way that's best for us individually. But anybody who wants to, let's say, live the longest life needs to pursue health and well-being, which means good diet, good exercise, good sleep. That's true for anybody. And even the directives for good diet, good exercise, good sleep are going to be, the bulk of them are probably going to be the same for everyone. That being said, every single person is going to have a somewhat different ideal set of recommendations if they're really optimized individually. All of us are here to keep the same 613 mitzvahs, the same Torah, and the foundational principles are the same. And the foundational rules of being a mensch are the same. The foundational rules of being a representative of Hashem, a representative of Torah in the world, are the same. That being said, every single one of us is designed a little bit differently because every single one of us is supposed to bring our own unique flavor to that. This is a bit of a random example, but I think it's a little bit more specific maybe at some level of resolution. Let's say that someone loves barbecue, right? So they go around to all the best barbecue joints and they go from barbecue place to barbecue place and try them all out, you know, and they're like, every time they try it, they're trying the, you know, the sort of the top level barbecue places, and each place they're really getting into the experience and the subtleties, the differences in the flavor and the textures and all of these things. They're all barbecue. They're all largely the same, but the bottom line is each of them is a different flavor, which is why the person doesn't just go to the same place every time. They want to go to different places. They want to experience a different variety of flavors. The principles of good barbecue are the same, but there's a lot of room for variation in details. By percentage, if you look at what good barbecue places all do the same versus what they do different, the vast majority is the same. The general principles of temperature and time and preparation and trimming and all these things are the same. But the specific places where there are differences, those differences are substantial and will provide a different experience. And a person may say, barbecue is my favorite food. That being said, I want to eat all different varieties of good barbecue. Right? The vast majority of what we're here to do is the same. The same halachas, the same. Even when it comes to minhagim, there are different communities, let's say, different communities. Broadly, Ashkenaz and Sfard have separate categories of minhagim, down to the level of sort of halacha itself. Then within Sfard and within Ashkenaz, you have different communities that have different, you know, minhagim, different sets of minhagim. And even within one community and one consistent set of minhagim, right? Let's say Chabad, there is an official protocol for what I call the Chabad minhagim, Chabad customs. And anyone who is a, you know, let's say, someone who considers themselves a part of Chabad to the level they follow Chabad customs, follows the same Chabad customs. That doesn't mean every one of our Shabbos tables looks exactly the same and sounds the same, and our Yom Tov tables and the way we speak to people and the way, there's still, it could be that if you add up the number of things we do out of 24 hours a day, it might be 99% the same. But the fact is that little bit of difference creates an entirely different flavor. And Hashem wants multiple flavors. The world needs multiple flavors of bringing light in the world, which is why the menorah had 7 different branches. They needed to be there. 6 branches was a 0% menorah. And if any one of these personality types was missing from Klal Yisrael, from us as a people collectively, we wouldn't be who we need to be and we wouldn't be doing what we need to do. The different varieties need to be there. And the bulk of what the primary objective is the same. Every branch of the menorah was there to provide light to the world. But each branch needed to be separate to all the others to do that properly. Every one of us is here to channel divine light into the world. We all share that in common. The majority of what we do is the same. The foundational principles are the same, the halachas are the same. There's some degree of variation in minhagim, but even within one set of minhagim, every one of us has our own personality, and Hashem did that for a reason, which means that our specific take, our specific experience is supposed to have a unique flavor. It's supposed to be that way. It needs to be that way. And if it's not that way, something's missing. Now, when it comes to the lighting of the menorah, who's the quintessential lighter of the menorah? Aaron HaKohen. Right, you could prepare the menorah, you have the golden candelabra in the menorah, and you put in the oil and the wicks and everything. It's all there ready to go. You can sit there for 1,000 years until, I don't know, the oil evaporate. I don't know if it would evaporate, whatever would happen, it would dry out. I don't know, something. If no one ever lit the wicks, there's no light. Every single one of us has a body, has an animal soul, has a divine soul, has all the components that we need to be a source of light, a candle to the world. Sometimes the flame on a candle didn't get lit yet. And who was the one that was the epitome, the quintessential or the archetype of the one who lights the menorah? Aaron HaKohen. Now, if we look to Pirkei Avos, it's actually the chapter we just read this past Shabbos. There are many different Tanoim, sages of the Mishnah, who give us, lots of really important and valuable advice. One of them one of the most prominent of all the sages throughout all of the oral Torah is Hillel. Hillel HaZaken, right? The story of someone who wasn't Jewish, was considering converting. He came to Hillel, and he asked Hillel, could you tell me everything on one foot? What did Hillel say? Don't do to others what you don't want done to yourself. This is the whole Torah. Everything else is commentary. That's Hillel. The same Hillel who said that and said this is the foundation of Torah Judaism, that same Hillel also said in this past week's chapter of Pirkei Avos, Heve mitalmidav shel Aaron HaKohen, be among the students of Aaron HaKohen. Aaron the high priest, the brother of Moshe Rabbeinu. What was Aaron known for? He continues, Ohev Shalom, love peace. He loves peace. Roidev Shalom, one who pursues peace. Right? Generally speaking, we pursue the things that we're interested in. We pursue things that we love. Right? Pursuing something takes effort. We only ever put effort into something if there is a motivation of one sort or another, fear, interest, desire, whatever it is, urge. There's something motivating us if we're putting in effort. Love is a very powerful motivator. And he's saying, Oyev Shalom, love peace, not just as an ideal, love it in a real way to the point that it drives you to pursue it actively. Roidev Shalom, run, proactively pursue peace. Oyev Esabrios, one who loves creations, umakarvan la Torah, and brings them close to the Torah. Now, this is a bit of a, I don't know, like if someone referred to me as a creation or, a creature, I probably wouldn't be super flattered. Why? Obviously, if he uses the word brios, creations, as opposed to people, there's a reason, and the reason is, yes, he's making a point. He's telling us the extent of Aaron's love for peace and the extent to which that would drive him to pursue peace, and his love for every individual, which obviously is the underlying factor behind loving of peace. Oyev esabrios, even if there is someone about whom the only good thing you can find to say about them is, well, Hashem created them. If there's someone whose thought, speech, action, everything about them is just horrible, and you literally can't find anything positive to say about them except the fact that Hashem created them, someone who is among the students of Aaron will still love that person and will still pursue the best interests of that person. Why? Every one of us is a candle. And yes, a candle may never have been lit. You could have a candle that's sitting in a dark room and it's not providing any light. It's not helping anyone. It's not helping anything. It's not doing anything productive. But it's a candle. All I need, just walk up with a match and light it and you're good to go. You can walk away and you have a candle. All of a sudden the room's bright. Oh, that candle's not providing any light. Yeah, maybe if someone would come up and light it, it would provide some light. So Aaron says, love everyone, pursue the best interests of everyone. Oyev esabrios, even if the only good thing you can find to say about someone is that Hashem created them, bottom line is, did Hashem create them? Yes. Does that mean, do they have something to provide? Yes. Are they a lamp? Yes. So go light them and maybe they'll provide some light. That's what Aaron was all about. So, and what does that look like practically? Makarvan la Torah, bringing people closer to the Torah, bringing people close to the culture, what they were designed for, the purpose, which is to illuminate the world through Torah and mitzvahs, very specifically. Again, the foundations, the fundamentals are the same for everyone. Practically speaking, if you want to bring someone close to Torah, now, there can be multiple things that are true at the same time, right? And this is something that's very, very important when dealing in any sort of, let's say, educator-educatee relationship, whether it's a parent and a child, a teacher and a student in a classroom, someone who's trying to mentor someone or to influence someone. It could be true to say, you know what, like this person's behavior is unacceptable, they're entitled, it's ridiculous, it doesn't make any sense. All of that might be true. That doesn't mean that it's going to be productive to start telling them this is ridiculous and your behavior is entitled and it doesn't make any sense. Could there be a time and a place for a comment like that? Maybe in very rare scenarios. But the bottom line is we're all subjective, we all experience what we experience, and even if my behavior is deserving of a strong rebuke and deserving of being told, this is ridiculous, you're capable of better than that, what are you doing, you're wasting your life, this doesn't make any sense, etc., etc., etc. It doesn't mean that if someone tells me that, that's the most likely thing that's going to be the most helpful in terms of actually getting me to change, right? Approaching someone empathetically, because we're all subjective. We all have very strong feelings, and our biases are very strongly influenced by our feelings, etc., and our subjective experience, which means that if someone is behaving in a way that's not appropriate and they're capable of better and they're entitled, whatever it is, it's natural to, let's say, feel frustrated and be like, I want to just tell this person all these things. But, and this is such an important thing, to stop and think for a second, give ourselves some clarity, stop, take a deep breath and say, why am I frustrated? The reason I'm frustrated is because this person should be behaving differently, they're capable of behaving differently, and that's frustrating. Okay, so if the reason I'm frustrated is because this person should be behaving differently, that means I want this person to behave differently, right? Yes. So the correct response to that frustration is going to be the thing which is the most likely to lead them towards that behavior, which is almost never going to be the natural response that tends to come out of our mouth when we're frustrated if we didn't stop and create space to think about this and to think it through, right? And to say, okay, well, is the frustration, it might make sense, it might be true. Why am I frustrated? Because I want something different. Okay, so if the reason you're frustrated is because you want something different, stop and ask yourself, what's most likely to actually create the outcome that you want so that you don't have to feel frustrated anymore? And 999 times out of 1,000, if not more, the response is going to be, the response that's going to be the most effective is one that's empathetic. Right now, empathy is not sympathy, right? Empathy means trying to feel what the person feels. Try to actually understand what's their experience, what are they going through, why are they behaving the way that they're behaving. And the moment that we manage to see another person's experience, to really, really feel where they're coming from and why they feel the way they're feeling, which is leading to the behavior that they're behaving, that puts us in such a different place to be able to say, okay, so then what are the things that are missing that I can provide to help bring this person towards where I want them to be? Right? If we can stop and make the space to do that, the response is likely going to be very different to what it would have been if we hadn't taken the time to think this through. And chances are, even if we are not the best at this and we don't come up with the ultimate perfect, just the fact that we stopped and asked ourselves these questions and took a deep breath and thought it through, chances are, and it's also something that it's a skill that we learn and we get better at, chances are, even the first time we try it, even if we're not particularly gifted at it, the response that results is going to be 1,000 times more productive than the response that would have come out as a natural expression of the frustration. Because just the gap between the response being the natural outburst that results from frustration as opposed to the response that results from asking ourselves, why are we frustrated? What's most likely realistically to practically increase the likelihood of us getting to the outcome that we want? They're different worlds. Right? And this is why Aaron, his approach was oyev es habrios, love, even if the only good thing you can say about someone is that they're a creation of Hashem and they're doing everything wrong. So why are you frustrated? Because their behavior is wrong and you want their behavior to be better. So stop and ask yourself, what's the most likely way of doing that? Oyev es habrios. Aaron loved everyone, umakarvan la Torah, and as a result of his love for people, he was able to bring them closer. Now, there are two parts to this, and the Alter Rebbe makes this very clear, because this could be misunderstood as, sort of a manipulation and you just, sort of behaving as though you like someone, or you love someone, or you care about them because there's an outcome you want, and this is the way to get what you want, which is manipulative. But the Alter Rebbe in Perek Lamed Beis of Tanya says that is not what this is about. The Alter Rebbe says, even if through your Avas Yisroel, through your love, you don't bring them closer to Torah at all. What happened? So you loved someone. Is that bad? The mitzvah of v'ahavta l'reacha kamecha. It's that is something that in and of itself, first of all, is invaluable, period, even if nothing else ever comes of it. This is an invaluable, positive thing. It just so happens to be that it's also the most effective way to bring people closer to Torah and mitzvahs. So, we do have a, let's say, relatively collective objective, which is to illuminate the world, to make the world brighter with divine light through Torah and mitzvahs. The fundamentals are the same. The fundamentals are very consistent. That being said, there are different personality types and different specific pursuits, different specific emphases, different specific flavors we bring to that. And it's supposed to be that way, which is why Hashem created each of us differently. It doesn't mean that we just go and do our own thing and say, oh, I have my own way of serving Hashem. It's like, well, no, if that's not what Hashem said to do, then it doesn't count. Right? If, imagine, someone asks you a favor, imagine, a lady says to her husband, would you mind helping me with the dishes? And he says, I really love you, but I have my own way of expressing that, which is for me to go watch football with my friends right now. Good luck. Good luck on that one. Right? No, it doesn't work that way. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean that everyone has to bring everything has to be identical. The principles are common, which are what Torah tells us. We bring our own flavor to that, and it's supposed to be the case. And every one of us is a light, and if we want to share that with people, if we want to give people a chance, right? Imagine that you're in a dark room and there's a candle. It's like you really, really need to be able to see. And it's like there's literally a candle. It has the fuel, it has the wick, it has everything you need, and you're missing a match. It's like, urgh. And if you could find a match, it's like amazing because there's a candle ready to go. It's just a matter of striking the match. Every single one of us is that candle and has everything it takes. And imagine, you have a building full of people and it's dark and every room has a bunch of people in it. And you're the only one with a box of matches. If you can go around from room to room and just light the lamp in each room, it's like, wow, with your box of matches, you've just changed everything for everyone. If we can go around and light those lamps, the magnitude of the impact that we can have is literally unimaginable. And the most effective way to do that is, Oya Vesabrios, to love everyone.